The courtroom was eerily quiet as the gavel slammed down, its sound echoing through the space like a harbinger of doom. Every eye was fixed on the judge, whose hands trembled ever so slightly as they gripped the wooden hammer. It was supposed to be just another day in the courtroom, but today, everything would change. The air was thick with tension, every breath taken in unison, each heart racing in anticipation. As the judge prepared to speak, the silence grew deafening, the kind of silence that swallowed all other thoughts. Then the words came, unexpected and earth-shattering. "We have a confession." A gasp swept through the room, and all eyes turned to the defendant. But the shock wasn't over. The confession was just the beginning. A key piece of evidence had surfaced, a missing witness had been found, someone who could bring everything to light. But the revelation was just the tip of the iceberg. The room was in chaos now. The confession had shaken everyone, but it was the missing witness that had everyone on edge. The room buzzed with whispers. Who was this mysterious figure who had suddenly appeared to tip the scales of justice? The prosecutor, shaking his head, stood up, trying to regain control. "We need to know everything," he said, his voice now steady but laced with uncertainty. The defense attorney, visibly angry, slammed his fist on the table. "This isn't how this works. You can't just bring in some phantom witness to turn the case." But the judge raised a hand, signaling for silence. "We will hear from them," the judge said, his voice firm. And as the doors opened once again, the mysterious figure stepped forward, their identity still hidden by a veil of shadows. No one knew what to expect next, but they all understood that this trial was about to take a dark, unpredictable turn. The doors creaked open again. This time everyone was on edge, waiting for the unknown. The mysterious figure entered slowly, their steps echoing in the otherwise silent room. The crowd couldn't help but stare, the air thick with curiosity. As the figure reached the stand, they removed their hood, revealing their identity. A familiar face, one that everyone had thought was long gone. It was someone who had once been crucial to the case, someone who had mysteriously disappeared without a trace. Gasps filled the room as the audience realized what this meant. The missing piece of the puzzle was finally here. The figure stepped forward, their eyes meeting the judge's, steady and unwavering. "I'm here to tell the truth," they said, their voice cool and calm, yet somehow trembling with the weight of what was about to unfold. The figure's words hung in the air. The tension in the courtroom was unbearable. The judge leaned forward, his face hardening as he processed the revelation. The missing witness, here in front of them, alive and ready to testify. The prosecution and defense exchanged looks, both unsure of what to do next. The defendant, meanwhile, was in shock, unable to process the reality of the situation. Their eyes flickered between the judge, the witness, and a lawyer next to them. What would this mean for their case? Was this the end, or had they just found a way out? The witness paused, taking a deep breath before beginning their testimony. "I was there," they said, their voice low but resolute. "I saw everything." The figure's words shattered the silence. The room seemed to breathe again as they spoke. "I saw the defendant." The room fell into a hush, everyone holding their breath. "And I know what happened that night." The defendant's face turned pale, their hands shaking as the truth finally began to surface. The eyes of the courtroom were no longer on the defendant, but on this new figure who held the key to everything. The mystery had deepened. No one knew what this witness would reveal, but it was clear that the story was far from over. The stakes had never been higher. As the witness began to recount their version of the events, the courtroom felt like it was teetering on the edge of a precipice, ready to plunge into chaos. The revelation of the witness had set the stage for a new chapter in the trial. Yet, as the dust settled, there was an undeniable sense of unease. The courtroom buzzed with uncertainty. Everyone knew the witness testimony would be pivotal, but the true story of how they came to be here remained a mystery. Outside the courtroom, the protagonist, Anna, sat quietly in a small, dimly lit office, her hands trembling as she scrolled through case files. Each page, each document, was a reminder of the personal stakes she had in this case. This wasn't just about justice. It was about her own past, a past entwined with the very events at the center of the trial. Anna's fight was not just for the truth. It was for herself. As the weight of the moment settled upon her, the air around her seemed to grow heavier, and she felt the burden of every decision she'd made, every step she'd taken. She knew this was just the beginning. As the trial continued, Anna's resolve was tested. She was in the middle of a battle she didn't fully understand, yet she could not turn back. Each day in court brought more uncertainty, and the lines between right and wrong seemed to blur further. Her interactions with the defense lawyer John were becoming more strained. He had once been her ally, but now their relationship was fraying, torn apart by conflicting ideals. John was desperate to win, but Anna was driven by something deeper, a need for truth, a desire to set the record straight. One afternoon, they had a heated conversation in the courtroom hallway. "You're not thinking straight, Anna," John snapped, his voice sharp with frustration. "This isn't about truth, it's about victory." Anna, her eyes fierce with determination, replied, "For me, it's always been about the truth. You should remember that." The tension between them simmered, leaving both of them uncertain of the path ahead. The days in court were long, and the pressure was mounting. Anna found herself alone more often than not, retreating into her own thoughts, grappling with the weight of the case. She spent hours in her apartment late into the night, reviewing witness statements, cross-referencing every detail. The more she uncovered, the more questions arose. One evening, she sat at her desk, a cup of coffee growing cold beside her, when a particular detail caught her eye. It was a small discrepancy in the missing witness account, a detail that didn't add up. It was the type of thing that could be easily overlooked, but not by Anna. This was the kind of thing that had the power to unravel everything. She could feel the pulse of discovery racing through her veins. She had found something that could change the direction of the entire trial. But as the realization sank in, she knew she couldn't move forward without more proof. Anna's discovery sent shockwaves through her. The missing piece of the puzzle had been uncovered, but with it came a new set of problems. The evidence was fragile, and Anna knew she had to be careful. She reached out to a trusted colleague, Michael, to help her navigate the next steps. "If we go public with this, it could destroy the case," Michael warned, his voice grave over the phone. "But if we don't, we're letting the real truth slip through our fingers." Anna paused, weighing the options. It wasn't just about the case anymore. It was about what was right. "We have to do this, Michael," Anna said finally, her voice steady. "We're not letting this go, not this time." The next few hours were crucial as they prepared to present the new evidence to the court, knowing full well that the outcome could alter everything. The courtroom was quiet when Anna and Michael presented their new evidence. The weight of it hung in the air like a storm cloud, with everyone unsure of what would happen next. The judge, stone-faced, looked over the documents, his gaze intense. The defense team shifted nervously, while the prosecution appeared momentarily stunned. It was the first time in the trial that Anna had seen such a shift in the balance of power. The missing witness account had been called into question, and the discrepancy could no longer be ignored. Anna's heart raced as the room waited for the judge's ruling. The silence felt suffocating. "This changes everything," the judge said finally, his voice low and commanding. "We will adjourn for the day and reconvene tomorrow to hear more." As the court session was called to a close, Anna knew the trial had taken an unexpected turn. But she also understood the cost of the truth. Tomorrow, everything would change again. The courtroom was no longer just a place for legal proceedings. It had become a battleground. Anna could feel the tension thickening with each passing moment. The once clear case was now muddied by doubt and confusion. As each new piece of evidence was presented, new questions arose. But nothing seemed to shake the defendant's resolve. John stood firm, his arguments relentless. The prosecution, too, had found new grounds to argue, their strategies shifting with every revelation. But the most dangerous player in the game was the witness. Though they had seemed like an ally, their testimony now appeared to hold darker undertones. Anna couldn't shake the feeling that the witness wasn't just a key figure in the case, but someone who had an agenda of their own. As the hours dragged on, Anna could feel the walls closing in. This wasn't just a trial anymore. It was a chess game where every move had a consequence. And she was starting to question whether she was playing the right side. As the trial progressed, Anna realized she could no longer trust anyone entirely. The defense attorney, John, had started playing dirty, pushing boundaries that Anna hadn't anticipated. His accusations became sharper, his arguments more personal. At one point, he implied that Anna was too emotionally involved to see the facts clearly. "You're not thinking like a lawyer, Anna," he snapped during a heated exchange. "You're thinking like someone with a vendetta." The words stung more than she cared to admit. But Anna wasn't about to back down. She had spent years building her career on logic, not emotion. And yet, every argument, every piece of evidence seemed to be designed to unravel her. Even the witnesses she trusted seemed to have their own motives. The balance of power was shifting, and Anna knew that she needed to regain control before everything she had worked for collapsed. But how? The stakes were too high, and the answers were slipping further from her grasp. After the confrontation with John, Anna felt isolated in a way she hadn't anticipated. She sat alone in her office, surrounded by mountains of paperwork, trying to piece together the puzzle. But the evidence wasn't enough. There were gaps, inconsistencies that she couldn't ignore. The more she looked into it, the more everything seemed to be falling apart. Was the witness lying? Was there a conspiracy she hadn't seen coming? The doubt gnawed at her. At that moment, a knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. It was Michael, her trusted colleague. "You're looking worn out," he said, stepping inside. "I've been reviewing the case with some fresh eyes. I think we're missing something." He handed her a file. Anna opened it, her heart racing. Inside was a new lead, a connection she hadn't noticed before. It wasn't much, but it was a thread she could follow. A small glimmer of hope, enough to push her forward. But she knew the dangers of hope. It could either fuel your fight or destroy you. The next day in court, Anna's mind raced as she prepared to present her new lead. The air in the courtroom felt heavier than ever before. She could feel the opposition closing in, their every move calculated to undermine her. The missing witness credibility was hanging by a thread, but they were still in play. Anna had to move carefully. As she presented the new evidence to the judge, the silence in the room was almost suffocating. The defense didn't look surprised. They had been expecting something like this. "What exactly are you trying to prove, Miss Reynolds?" John sneered. "That your precious witness is lying? That's a pretty big accusation with very little evidence." Anna's pulse quickened, but she stood firm. "I'm not here to destroy anyone's credibility," she said, her voice steady. "I'm here to find the truth." The judge, still impassive, looked over the new evidence carefully. The tension was palpable. Anna could feel the weight of every word she spoke, knowing that one wrong move could cost her everything. As the day wore on, Anna began to sense a shift in the courtroom. The judge's demeanor had changed. He was no longer as neutral as before. The defense team was playing their cards expertly, and the prosecution seemed to be falling behind. The witness testimony had started to unravel, but so had Anna's grip on the case. With each passing minute it became clearer. This trial was spiraling out of her control. But Anna couldn't afford to back down. The case was too personal. She had to see it through to the end. She had to find the truth, no matter the cost. The day's session adjourned, but the sense of foreboding remained. Anna left the courthouse with a growing sense of dread. She knew the battle wasn't over. It was only just beginning, and she was no longer sure who the real enemy was. Was it the defense? The witness? Or something darker, lurking in the shadows? The tension in the courtroom had escalated to a point where it felt as though any sudden movement could shatter the fragile balance. Anna could feel the weight of her decisions pressing down on her with every passing moment. The new evidence she had introduced had triggered a wave of responses, some from the defense, others from the judge, but none of them had offered the resolution she needed. Her gut told her that something more was at play behind the scenes. She had been pushed to the edge, questioning not just the integrity of the case, but her own role in it. Meanwhile, the defense continued to build a case that seemed increasingly personal, aiming to undermine Anna's every move. But the most disturbing realization was that someone in the courtroom had to be orchestrating the chaos. Could it be the mysterious witness? Or was there a darker force pulling the strings? Anna needed answers, and she needed them fast. The trial continued, but Anna couldn't shake the feeling that they were all being played. Every witness, every statement, seemed designed to trip her up. The judge's impartiality was now in question as well, his demeanor subtly shifting as the case progressed. It was as if the courtroom was under a spell, each participant caught in a web of manipulation. One afternoon, Anna stayed late at the courthouse, sifting through case files that had been overlooked. A small, seemingly insignificant detail caught her eye. An email, buried among the evidence, revealing a communication between the missing witness and an anonymous contact. It was the kind of lead she had been waiting for. This was more than just a courtroom battle now. It was a race against time. Anna knew she had to move quickly, but she also knew that exposing this could have serious consequences for everyone involved. Anna's discovery set a chain of events in motion that she couldn't control. The next day, she met with Michael to discuss the email. He stared at the printout in silence for a long time before speaking. This changes everything," he said quietly, his voice filled with both awe and fear. "If this gets out, it could ruin the case, possibly your career." Anna's heart raced, but she knew she had no choice. The truth had to come out. "It's not just about the case anymore," she replied, her voice steady but heavy with emotion. "It's about doing what's right." As they prepared to present the new evidence, Anna felt a sense of dread settle over her. She knew the risks, but she also knew that not acting would be an even greater betrayal. The courtroom was about to face a storm, and no one knew where the pieces would fall. When Anna presented the email in court, the room fell into stunned silence. The defense attorneys immediately shot to their feet, their voices rising in opposition. "This is inadmissible," they shouted. "This is just another baseless claim." The judge's expression remained neutral, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes, a shift that Anna couldn't quite read. She watched as the defense mounted a counterattack, attempting to discredit the new evidence, to frame it as a mistake, a fabrication. But Anna stood her ground. "The truth is not always convenient," she said, her voice strong. "But it is the truth, and we cannot ignore it." The judge, after a long pause, declared a recess. The room was heavy with the uncertainty of what would come next. Anna was exhausted, but she knew the battle was far from over. She was about to face something much more dangerous than she had anticipated, a system designed to protect its own secrets. As the trial recessed for the day, Anna retreated to her office, her mind spinning with what had just transpired. The weight of the day's events hung heavily on her shoulders, but she was determined to stay the course. Her phone buzzed with a message from John, the defense attorney. "You've crossed a line, Anna. You can't undo what's been done." The message was a warning, but Anna wasn't afraid anymore. She had already crossed that line the moment she decided to seek the truth. As she sat in her office, staring at the email printout, she felt the magnitude of her choices. The trial had become something more than a courtroom drama. It had become a fight for justice, no matter the cost. She had no way of knowing what the next day would bring, but she was ready. This was her moment, and she would not back down. The air in the courtroom was thick with anticipation as the judge called the trial back to order. Anna stood at her table, her mind racing as she prepared for the next twist in the case. The defense had spent the recess trying to discredit the new evidence, but Anna had anticipated their counterattack. She was ready. Her eyes flicked briefly to the witness stand, where the mysterious figure now sat, an enigma that had shifted the course of everything. With every passing moment, the truth became clearer, but so did the consequences of revealing it. Anna could feel the stakes rise with every word that was spoken, each piece of testimony a potential domino that could either expose a hidden conspiracy or destroy her case altogether. The defense was relentless, their accusations becoming increasingly personal, aiming to undermine Anna's credibility. But in the back of her mind, she knew something the others didn't. She had a card to play. And it was time to reveal it. Anna knew she had one shot at this, and she had to make it count. She called for the witness to take the stand again, this time armed with the new piece of evidence that had been uncovered in secret. The room fell silent as the witness, who had once seemed like a mere pawn, now held the keys to everything. Anna's voice was steady as she asked the question that would change everything. Who really put you in touch with the defendant? The question hung in the air like a bomb, and for a moment, the room was still. The witness hesitated, their eyes darting nervously. Then, they spoke, their words a revelation that no one had expected. The missing link, the person who had orchestrated it all, was someone no one had even considered. The courtroom was rocked by the truth, and Anna could feel the weight of everything shifting in that instant. The revelation sent shockwaves through the room. The defense attorney's face turned pale as the witness spoke, revealing the unexpected figure behind the scenes. It was someone from Anna's past, someone she had trusted, someone whose involvement had been hidden for years. The realization hit Anna like a wave. She had known this person, had worked alongside them, and now they were tied to the very conspiracy she had been trying to uncover. But as the pieces fell into place, Anna realized that the truth was far more complicated than she had anticipated. The line between friend and foe had blurred. The revelation shattered everything she thought she knew about the case, and it left her questioning her own judgment. Who could she trust now? She had no answers, only more questions. But there was no turning back now. The truth had come to light, and there was no way to undo it. The courtroom fell into a tense silence as the full impact of the revelation sank in. The judge called for a brief recess, his voice unsteady as he tried to regain control of the proceedings. But Anna was too far gone. The world she had built for herself, the walls she had carefully constructed around the case, were collapsing. She had never imagined this, never imagined that someone so close to her could be involved in such a dark plot. As she sat in the recess, her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. She couldn't believe what she had just uncovered. The betrayal cut deep. The person behind the conspiracy wasn't just an anonymous figure. They were a part of her world, someone she had trusted implicitly. Anna felt the weight of the moment settle over her, but she also knew one thing. She had to see this through. There was no turning back, no running from the truth. The trial resumed, but everything had changed. Anna stood before the judge, her heart heavy with the knowledge of what she had uncovered. The defense was scrambling, their previous confidence shattered, as they tried to regroup and regain control of the situation. But Anna didn't care about their tactics anymore. She was focused on one thing: the truth. The courtroom was no longer a place for legal strategy. It had become a battleground for justice. As the judge called for the final statements, Anna's voice rang out clear and unwavering. "This is not just about the law," she said, her gaze sweeping across the room. "This is about right and wrong. And no matter what happens today, the truth is out. There's no going back from that." The finality of her words hung in the air, leaving a sense of inevitability in the room. Anna had exposed the truth, and no matter the consequences, she had done what was right. The courtroom was on the verge of eruption. Anna stood before the judge, her mind racing but her body remaining calm. She could feel the eyes of everyone in the room on her, but she focused only on the truth, on the clarity that had emerged from the chaos. The defense was frantic, trying to discredit every word that had been spoken, but Anna remained steadfast. "The truth is out," she said, her voice ringing with conviction. "And no matter how much you try to bury it, it cannot be undone." Her words hung in the air, as though challenging everyone to confront the reality of what they had been denying. Tension in the room was unbearable. Every gaze, every breath, was held in anticipation of what would happen next. Anna knew that this moment could change everything. The final verdict was approaching, but it was no longer just about winning or losing. It was about ensuring that justice, in its purest form, would prevail. The judge took a long pause, his gavel resting on the desk, his fingers tracing the worn edges. For what felt like an eternity, no one moved. The entire courtroom was holding its breath, waiting for the next words to fall. "The evidence has been presented," the judge finally said, his voice low but authoritative. "It's clear that the path forward is uncertain." Anna's heart pounded in her chest as she watched him closely. He was not one to be easily swayed, but the facts were now undeniable. "We will deliberate," the judge continued, "and a verdict will be reached shortly." The tension in the room was unbearable as everyone stood, uncertain of what was to come. Anna's mind raced, wondering if her efforts would be enough, if she had done enough to ensure that justice would be served. But she also knew that the outcome was no longer in her hands. It was in the hands of the judge, the jury, and whatever forces still lurked in the shadows. As the judge adjourned the session for deliberation, Anna left the courtroom with a heavy heart. The hallways felt long and narrow, echoing her every step. The case had taken its toll, and the emotional weight was suffocating. She walked into the waiting room, where Michael was standing, his face etched with concern. "How do you feel?" he asked quietly. Anna didn't answer right away. She was still processing everything. The trial had changed her in ways she hadn't expected. She was no longer just fighting for justice. She was fighting for herself. "I've done everything I can," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Now, it's up to them." Michael nodded, but Anna could see the doubt in his eyes. He didn't say it aloud, but they both knew the truth. No matter how hard they fought, the final outcome was always uncertain. They could only hope that the truth would be enough. The courtroom reconvened hours later, and the air was thick with anticipation. The judge had returned, and his gavel struck the sound block, signaling the beginning of the end. Anna's stomach twisted in knots as she stood, facing the jury as the judge began to speak. After careful deliberation, the judge began, his tone neutral. "The jury has reached a verdict." Anna's breath caught in her throat as the words reverberated through her mind. The entire room seemed to hold its breath as the judge read the decision. "Guilty," he said, his voice clear and unwavering. A wave of disbelief swept through the room. Anna's heart sank as the reality of the verdict set in. The witness, the evidence, the struggle. They had all led to this moment. It was done. The case had been decided. But even as the words echoed in her mind, Anna knew that the fight wasn't over. This was just the beginning of something even greater. The gavel came down once more, marking the finality of the verdict. But Anna's mind was racing, unable to process what had just happened. The trial, the fight for truth, the emotional toll. It all felt like a blur now. As the courtroom began to empty, she stood still, her thoughts spiraling. The truth had been exposed, but at what cost? The weight of the decision hung over her, a heavy burden she wasn't sure she was ready to carry. She had won, yes, but what did it truly mean? The courtroom emptied, and she was left alone with her thoughts, with the knowledge that the road ahead was still uncertain. Anna couldn't help but wonder if this was the right victory, or just the beginning of another fight she hadn't yet seen coming. There was no way to know. But she had done what she had set out to do. She had fought for justice, and in the end, that had to be enough. The courtroom had emptied, but the echoes of the trial lingered like ghosts. Anna remained seated, her thoughts swirling with everything that had transpired. The verdict was behind her, but the consequences stretched far into the future. She thought about the faces she had seen, friends, foes, strangers, each caught up in a story far larger than themselves. Justice had been served, but at what cost? She could feel the scars of the battle beneath her calm exterior. Outside, the world was moving on, unaware of the quiet storm that had raged inside those walls. Anna knew that her journey was far from over. The truth had been unveiled, but it had left behind questions that no one was ready to answer. She looked out the window, the cityscape sprawling endlessly, and whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning." Days after the trial, Anna found herself walking through the bustling streets, surrounded by the noise and indifference of everyday life. The contrast was stark. The world moved forward, oblivious to the personal war she had fought and won. As she passed familiar places, memories of the trial flashed in her mind, each one a reminder of what had been lost and gained. Her phone buzzed in her hand, a message from Michael. "We did it, but there's more to do." The words hit her with unexpected force. The fight for truth wasn't over, it was evolving. Anna looked up, eyes sharp, determination rekindling within her. The silent witness had become the real victim, but now she was ready to become something more, a warrior for justice, no matter the cost. That evening, Anna sat at her desk, a new case file open before her. The fight for justice was not just a chapter in her life, it was her mission. She ran her fingers over the worn cover, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over her. The courtroom had tested her, broken her, and rebuilt her. Now, with fresh resolve, she was ready to face whatever came next. The quiet hum of the city outside her window was a reminder that life never stopped. But Anna knew that with every new case, every new fight, she was carving out a future defined not by fear, but by courage. "This is not the end," she murmured softly. "It's the beginning of everything." Late into the night, Anna's phone rang. It was an unknown number. She hesitated before answering. On the other end, a familiar voice spoke softly. "You've stirred things up, Anna. But the truth isn't always what it seems." The call sent a chill down her spine. The past wasn't done with her yet. There were still secrets lurking in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered. Anna sat back, her mind racing, but her resolve only deepened. Whatever darkness awaited, she would face it head on. "I'm ready," she said quietly, more to herself than to the voice on the other end. The fight for justice was far from over, but Anna was no longer afraid. She was the silent witness no more. She was a force to be reckoned with. The final moments lingered in a silence that was both heavy and electric. Anna stood by the window, looking out over the city lights that flickered like distant stars. Her thoughts were a whirlwind of triumph and loss, hope and uncertainty. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she spoke to the night. "Justice is never simple, but it's worth every battle." The line echoed softly, a promise and a warning. As the screen faded to black, the silence remained, sharp, haunting, unforgettable, leaving the audience to wonder what would come next, knowing that the story of the silent witness had only just begun.